Okay, so now we're going to look at how we hit those little delicate shots around the green. So your little chip shots. And we're going to start with the chip putt. So this is generally used when we are super close. Just got a tiny bit of fringe to go over. Don't need the full chipping action. It's called a chip putt because basically you're using your putting setup and technique, so really still lower body, but with a little bit of loft. So I've got a 9-iron here. Depending on how much you want the ball to run, you can use something slightly less. Now, if you are in this indoor environment, so this is a hard floor I'm chipping off. If you've got carpet, great. And maybe start with a little tee. So I've got one of these little winter tees here. So, and depending on what you've got around you, well, you don't want things rattling around, so you could use the paper wad, which we did in our full swing. So just pop that on the tee. So again, just basically taking your putting setup. Obviously the club is going to be longer, so we need to just stand a little bit taller. And what you'll suddenly see is as you put the club more vertical, the toe of the club is going to sit lower than the heel. And it's a good way to chip around the greens because it stops snagging on the grass. And you're literally just going to get that connection, tiny little putting action swings with the same tempo as that metronome as you're putting, with a little bit of loft. That's all I'm trying to do here is just clip that little tee underneath the ball. Super simple. And if I did it with got a plastic ball here, same thing, same setup, just trying to hit it, a couple of yards away. And if you are outside and want to use a real ball, or if you're brave enough to do it inside without breaking anything. Okay, obviously I'm chipping up. I've got a nice little chipping net here. You can pick these up off Amazon for next to nothing. Or you could always chip into a shoebox or something like that. But super simple technique. No excuses to practice it because everyone's got some paper they can find. Everyone can find enough space to hit it 2 or 3 yards. All you're looking is this is your landing spot, trying to hit it in there. So that is the chip putt. Super simple because it's basically like putting with a bit of loft on it. Right, moving on from there, we move into chipping. Now, chipping is generally when you need to fly it a little bit further, and the mechanics of the chip putt and the putt is really quite, there's not a lot of movement, especially in the lower half. When we move into chipping, we need to start to add the lower body, get a tiny bit of rotation. It's not huge. So sensation-wise, I still keep the connection of my upper body, okay? We predetermine how much roll we want by which club we use. Generally, I chip my sort of chip and runs either a 9-iron or an 8-iron. So what we've got to look at then is what do we change? So we're not going to go putting stance. So I have feet a lot closer together, and basically all we're trying to do is a tiny little pivot around our left hip, okay? Tiny little movement whilst keeping this connection. So you can practice this, get this feel that we had with the putting, and just add a little bit of turn and turn with the lower body. Let the lower body do the work. So everything's going to be moving together. There's no separation. It's like almost like you're rocking a baby. That's your sensation. And depending on how far you want it to fly, depends on how much of a swing you put on it. So I'm not going to use a real ball for this shot. Give me plastic ones. So again, here's that action. So feet much closer together. The feet are, they're about a club width apart. The reason we want to set everything up on this lead leg is because we need a consistent contact on the ball. All right, so we're just pivoting around this one spot So as you can see, this little tiny pivot creates a little bit more of an arc. All right, turning, turning, a little bit of loft on there. Okay, that went a bit high. These balls are super pingy. Okay, and then you can, depending on how much room you've got, you can move it further back. But all we're trying to do is just get that little tiny lift over that little bit of fringe grass, a little bit of rough that you've got to go over, and then hit the landing spot, and then it will run after that. So super, super simple. Chipping, chip putt. Have a little play with it. If you get a chance to practice with real balls, great, so you get the feel of a proper ball off there. But maybe do that outside. Okay, as we now get further away from the green, the chipping technique, obviously we want to keep the chipping technique as long as we can because it's the most simple thing to do and it's the smaller swing. So if you do get it wrong, it's not going to be super, super disastrous. But if you've suddenly got to go over more rough or over a bunker or some water or whatever, then we need to start to play a pitch shot. So pitching is a longer swing designed to hit it higher and land softer when it lands on the green. So we're going to use a bit more loft now. I've actually got a lob wedge here, but you can use a sand wedge. Pitching wedge, probably not, because it's not really going to get the height, and then people tend to try and scoop it. So although it says pitching wedge, generally don't use it. So go with the most loft you can. So when we look at the chipping again, we vary the clubs depending on how much roll we want. With pitching, we generally choose one club and then vary the length of the swing depending on how far we want to hit it. So let's talk about the action. So again, this can change, depends on how far you go, but generally I keep the ball position the same. And for me, I like the ball position pretty much off your left heel. Okay. And again, it's not a big wide stance where we're loading up and then transferring the weight. This is very much a connection. Everything's moving together. So I've still got the same sensation of connectiveness of my arms against my rib cage. Stance is very narrow. Weight is all on this lead foot. And I'm just pivoting around this lead foot. So the main thing with pitching is where I see most people struggle is they try and lift it and get all very flicky with it. A lot of mishits then happen. So what we want to do is keep everything moving. So even if I'm hitting a 20-yard shot, potentially my whole body is turned to face the target. So the one difference we're making now with these pitch swings, we haven't got the rigid connection of your chip shot. We now need to start to let the wrists get involved. A little bit of softness, depending on how far you're hitting it, depends on how much wrist hinge you have. If you need to hit it a little bit higher, then we can add a little bit of right hand underneath to help loft the club. If you want to hit it a bit lower, you just keep that right hand out of it and just keep it pushing forward. So there's so many different ways to play these shots, but the main things you want to look at is, can we get a decent connection on it? So ball off that left foot. Again, do this at home. You should be able to, we're not swinging it ceiling height. So we're just literally going, hands are pretty much going waist high to waist high with a little bit of wrist hinge, which sends the club on its way. I'm going to grip down the handle so I get a little bit more touch and feel for it, and then keep that connection back and through. Okay, you're just trying to work on that nice rhythm, nothing jerky. Check your finish position at the end. Okay, are you still balanced on this front foot? Okay. Or have you gone backwards, in which case chances are you're going to hit way behind the ball or hit halfway up the ball and scream it through the back of the green. So work on that, use your plastic wads if you've got a garden, Or you can hit airflow balls, even better. If you've got a big enough garden to hit real golf balls, even better still. But just trying to get a feel. When we go back out onto the range, you can start to work on hitting your spots and see what the different length of swings do for you. So have a good little play with that, and we'll see you soon.